Welcome to NYNJPA Weather, your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino, and this is the Weekend Edition. We're going to start first with the water vapor satellite picture as of 9 a.m. on Friday morning, and you can see that our major rainstorm is starting to lift to the northeast. Notice the strong moisture plume that's basically coming from the Atlantic and moving right into southern New England and the Hudson River Valley. The heavy rain will continue to march east, and by noon today I'm expecting all the rain to be over for Long Island and Connecticut. Notice also I've circled very dry air behind this upper level trough and upper level low. Now, this is not as strong as what we saw with the last rainstorm, where winds got really picked up and it ranged anywhere from 15 to 30 miles per hour with gusts easily over 40 miles per hour. It looks like that's not going to transpire again this time, but still look for some breezy weather conditions this afternoon. Otherwise, most locations will dry out and the skies will clear. Look out for the flash flooding though, especially throughout northern New Jersey, where rivers would likely crest around Saturday afternoon or Sunday morning. This is clearly a very dangerous situation, and if you haven't had a chance to get out of those river basins, I strongly suggest doing so with the help of course, the authorities who are likely helping out in this situation. So here's our surface map, and you can see our area low pressure over the St. Lawrence River Valley will continue to lift north and in northeast towards northern Maine and the Canadian Maritimes. High pressure will build in, and high pressure will be in control through much of this weekend. Now, as we look towards Saturday night, you can see at 500 millibars via the European model guidance from the Penn State E-Wall that we are dealing with a very progressive pattern. There are no large ridges or troughs, except for the one that's in the Canadian Maritimes that's lifting northeast, and our polar vortex is well up towards the North Pole. So as a result, we're dealing with a Pacific pattern for the most part that is very fast moving, but we call progressive, and as a result, any disturbance that moves through really doesn't pack much of a punch. Now, the surface map on Saturday evening shows that we do have a weak disturbance moving through the eastern Great Lakes, and that disturbance will likely reach the northern mid-Atlantic by Sunday morning. However, I checked the mid-levels of the atmosphere, and they are awfully dry for Sunday morning, so I really don't expect much in the way of any precipitation, perhaps an isolated stray shower over parts of Connecticut and the Hudson River Valley, but that's about it. Overall, this weekend is going to be dry and generally pleasant with temperatures near normal and scattered cloud cover. So it's going to give us a chance to recover from all of this heavy rain and flash flooding. Now, is there another storm possible for next week? I'm not too sure. I'm going to explain why in the following map. This is for Monday evening, and you can see high pressure. It's moving over the eastern Great Lakes and will eventually set up over the northern mid-Atlantic. I think this high pressure system is going to be the dominant influence throughout much of next week, and that's great news because that means the temperatures are going to warm up to near normal and eventually above normal for the end of the week, and also that's going to give plenty of time for northern New Jersey and many of the river valleys to dry out and clean up. So I'm expecting a very pleasant week for the most part. However, some model guidance is trying to hint at a major coastal storm developing. Let me show you exactly why I don't think that's going to be a true end to this forecast. This is 500 millibars on Monday night, and you can see that there's a rather impressive disturbance over the Mississippi River Valley. Now, this disturbance is supposedly becoming cut off in a progressive pattern, which means you have one disturbance after another, kind of like a train. So somehow this disturbance is going to become strongly positively tilted, slow down, and become cut off over the southeast. Well, the problem with that is that there's really no blocking mechanism to the east of this disturbance to slow it down and cut it off, and you have a train of disturbances coming from the west that should kick the disturbance east. So this type of solution, even though it's shown on the model guidance, should be questioned because it really doesn't make much in the way of physical sense. Now, moving beyond that point in the forecast, if you have that error developing on Monday night, it's going to continue to impact the forecast as we go on through next week. So what the model guys are trying to do is that then it tries to intensify this disturbance into a closed upper level low. Well, again, what would cause this to happen in a progressive pattern? I'm basically saying that this storm should be well out in the Atlantic. This disturbance should be well out in the Atlantic. But because it's trying to hold it over the southeast, which I think is an error, it's trying then to incorporate this disturbance that is sitting over the northern plains and moving into the western Great Lakes. And as a result, by Wednesday night, the model guidance is trying to produce a phased storm over the east coast. Now, again, if this disturbance doesn't just basically stop, sit over Georgia and North Carolina, and then phase, well, then there is no storm, because this disturbance is well out in the Atlantic, and the northern disturbance is just moving through like a regular cold front. So I think what we're really dealing with here is basically a very progressive pattern with disturbances moving through, but no major storm. And so therefore, at the surface, this low pressure system is likely going to be further out into the Atlantic. There could be some variable clouds on Thursday morning, but I think any precipitation is going to be well off the coast. In fact, in the marine forecast for premium members, I do have a threat of rain for the coastal waters well out beyond 20 nautical miles. But otherwise, I think we're looking just pretty much at clear skies to scattered clouds by Thursday afternoon, with temperatures basically near to slightly above normal, actually warming up towards the 60s as we move into Thursday afternoon and Friday. And this is the 500 millibar pattern on Thursday afternoon. And what I want to do, I'm trying to show you that this is why you can't just take a model verbatim. You have to think. You have to look at everything, at the way that the models play out these disturbances, and say, well, is this physically reasonable? Because of the error that develops on Monday with this upper level disturbance cutting off and tilting positive and then going negative, you end up with this huge ocean storm. And that has an impact on the pattern going forward, if it was to happen. But I don't think it will. And so therefore, this ridge is going to be more amplified. And as we move further on in the forecast towards next weekend, what you end up with on the forecast is a huge upper level low around the Canadian Maritimes. And look, an east-based negative NAO develops. The only problem is that it's not physically reasonable. You can't have a large polar vortex sitting over the Hudson Bay and then an even stronger upper level low sitting just to the east over the Canadian Maritimes. Something has to give here, especially this time of year. And when you consider that this whole upper level pattern is the result of one disturbance that supposedly stalls over the southeast coast for no apparent reason, well, then you kind of have to think for yourself and basically put together a pattern you think is more likely to happen. And as such, that's why I've done it in the blue and green. The blue is the subtropical jet, and the yellow, should I say, is the polar jet stream. And I like the way that the model guidance is handling the Pacific, which is very progressive, and it matches very well with the current MJO forecast, which basically is a forecast of convection in the tropical regions of the atmosphere, and also matches up very well with the stratospheric anomaly setting up, which basically supports a positive NAO, positive Arctic oscillation pattern. So this upper level low that's over the Hudson Bay will be a little bit further east towards the Canadian Maritimes. This deep trough off the Canadian Maritimes will likely be much weaker and more of an extension of the polar vortex than anything else. And so we continue with a progressive pattern with a large ridge over the central part of the country, which even the operational model guidance agrees with. But we're going to push that a little bit further north with very warm conditions from the plains to the east coast. Yes, I would not be surprised if by Saturday and Sunday, many locations are in the 60s to maybe even a few lower 70s over locations just south of Philadelphia. It's definitely setting up to be a warm pattern. This type of pattern is more supported by various teleconnections at the stratosphere and in the tropics than anything that's being forecasted by this model guidance this morning. Oh, by the way, the ensemble model guidance agrees with my forecast more so than this one from the European model guidance. Thank you for trusting in NYNJPA Weather, your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm your meteorologist, Stephen D. Martino. Have an excellent day.